everybody. So I'm Jane Herriman. I work at Julia Computing as their Director of Diversity and Outreach. And today I will be talking with you about efforts within the Julia community to make Julia more inclusive and more accessible. So first off, I'd like to start by thanking the Sloan Foundation for making this work possible. It was actually at last year's JuliaCon that Veral first announced that Sloan would be supporting our diversity efforts. And so it was in December then that I hired on with Julia Computing to take a stab at trying to jumpstart this program. And so we were left with the challenge of promoting diversity within the Julia user community. And so I'll share with you today the approach that we've taken to tackling this challenge, what we've done so far, what we're planning to do, and also how you can get involved and help out. So starting with our approach then. So the challenge of promoting diversity within tech, particularly within computer science and software engineering, is by no means a new one. And so we decided to base the approach to our efforts on prior successes. So hands down, the most impressive success story that I've seen amongst attempts to bring gender diversity to computer science is from Harvey Mudd College. So several years ago, Harvey Mudd College, particularly their computer science department, decided to revamp the department and its curriculum to make it more inclusive. So on the plot that we see here, on the horizontal axis, we have graduation years, and on the vertical axis, we have the percentage of women graduating with CS degrees from Harvey Mudd. And what we're seeing is a strong uptick in the percentage of women that are graduating with degrees in computer science until they hit gender parity a few years ago, and they've maintained it since then. So, to make this possible, to get to gender parity, Harvey Mudd implemented a few different changes, but among those changes, one of the key things that they did was to restructure their CS curriculum. So they broke up their introductory CS course into multiple tracks based on prior exposure and prior experience, where the idea was that they wanted anybody who was coming into that first intro to CS class, anyone who was coming in without having any programming knowledge whatsoever, would really get an introduction to computer science and to programming without getting lost or falling behind from day one. And so, inspired by this success story, we knew that a big part of making Julia more inclusive would be creating more accessible materials and in lowering the barrier to learning the language itself. So we decided to focus our efforts on creating more accessible teaching materials for people to learn Julia, and also on outreach to get more visibility for those materials, and also to get some measure of feedback from the audiences that we'd be using those materials on, so that we could refine the materials and make them better. What we've done so far. So far, we've primarily focused on creating and delivering content for single-time events, like a tutorial or a workshop. And we've done that both in online and in-person events. So as for our online events, about once per month, I've been doing a live YouTube tutorial where we introduce new users to the Julia language. And also about once per month, I try to pull somebody else in from the Julia community to do a tutorial on some other aspect of the ecosystem or some use of Julia. For all these tutorials, we have Jupyter notebooks hosted on JuliaBox that allow somebody who doesn't have Julia yet installed on their machine to follow along with the materials that the instructor is using in the video. And we also have a live chat running in parallel with the presentation, such that if anybody has questions, they can ask right away. And then all these materials stay up after the tutorials so that anybody who's interested can use them as resources to learn on their own time. As for in-person events, we've been hosting tutorials across universities and colleges around North America. So this is a picture from an event that I held at Smith College outside Boston. And here's a picture from Universidad Panamericana, which is in Mexico City. Now, in the last 6 months, we've held workshops like this at all the universities listed, and that's been made possible because we've partnered with tech-focused student organizations like Women in Computer Science and the Society of Black Scientists and Engineers. And so what we'll do is that we'll reach out to these organizations, and what we'll get from them are representatives who are on campus, so that we have local contacts who can help us organize logistics and advertise, so that when I show up to teach, everything goes pretty smoothly. Now, beyond our teaching-focused outreach efforts, we were able to bring in quite a bit of money from the Moore Foundation, the Sloan Foundation, and also Julia Computing to advance diversity efforts at JuliaCon this year specifically. So for this year's JuliaCon, we were able to bring in $45,000 US for diversity efforts. And with that money, we were actually able to sponsor conference travel for about 25 participants who we thought would diversify the conference this year. Okay, so what we will do. So in the coming months, I'm going to be focusing on partnering with existing courses and content creators to increase the usage of Julia in content that has already been designed to be accessible. I really can't emphasize enough the importance of bringing Julia more into computer science curricula and also generally computational science curricula, because Julia can really make a fantastic pedagogical tool. See, we already know that high-level languages can lower the barrier to teaching CS. And that's the reason that we see so many introductory programming courses popping up in Python and other high-level languages. But the thing is that even if the use of a high-level language in that first programming course can enter the first barrier to entering CS, by teaching loops and constructs like conditionals in a more accessible way, lower-level languages tend to be the lingua franca of more advanced topics in CS. And so that means that relatively new users, people who are relatively inexperienced in coming to programming in CS, can still hit a brick wall when they start to hit these more advanced topics. And so sort of the takeaway there is that when the two-language problem rears its head in pedagogy, it can really impact retention. But on the other hand, if we could use Julia all the way down in CS curricula, we could remove that brick wall, and that would disproportionately impact people who don't have as much exposure or don't have as much encouragement. So how you can help. If you're interested in helping with making Julia more accessible and more inclusive, one of the first things you can do is to help improve our documentation system for people who don't have a ton of prior knowledge coming in and trying to figure out what our functionality is doing, both in base Julia and also in the broader ecosystem. You can create tutorials in Julia, both to teach Julia itself and to teach other topics in Julia. And if you're comfortable, you can take those tutorial materials and you can contribute to our online series, whether you want to present the material or answer questions on live chat. You can identify intro issues for new contributors who want to start getting involved in the project. And this will be especially helpful as we approach Oktoberfest, because this is in October, if you're not familiar. DigitalOcean hosts this large hackathon that spans all of October. And you get a free t-shirt if you participate. So we always bring in new faces there. And if you can help any new recruits figure out how they can get started, that's super helpful. If you're in academia, you can teach a course in Julia at your university, and whether or not you're in academia, you can host local Julia tutorials and workshops, as well as Julia meetups. So if you're interested in doing any of these things, the time to get involved is now. It's the sooner the better, especially now that we're at 1.0, because really defining the nature of a community is especially important in its early stages. Because if we want to build a large community that's diverse and inclusive, doing so is more straightforward or easier if you're starting with a smaller community that is similarly diverse and inclusive, as opposed to one that's maybe more homogeneous and less inclusive. So again, if you are interested in getting involved, I'll be around the next couple days. If you have a need for any help or assistance or getting pointed in the right direction for how you might lend a hand, feel free to catch me here or to ping me either Twitter, GitHub, Slack, however else you might find me. So with that, thank you for your attention.